Hello, and welcome to another episode of the M42 Adventures podcast. I am your host, Rick Trimmer, and today we have an individual. His name is Greg Kuchan. He is out of San Diego, California, and I was actually put in touch with him from a buddy of mine named Renz, who lives down in California, and they surf together. And as you know, M42 Adventures is all about the outdoors and adventures. We're looking at doing a Costa Rican surf experience next year, and so Renz put me in touch with Greg, and we're going to jump into a conversation here, hopefully talking a little bit about surfing and then a little bit about financial, planning and real estate. He's a real estate agent down in the Southern California, San Diego area, and just a cool guy, and I'm excited for this conversation. So stay tuned. Where I'm at. So do you know anything about me at all? And we are introduced through Renz, right?
Yeah. Some cursory, like a little bit of research on you, but no.
Okay.
Tell me more.
So yeah, basically, that's why I started this was, this is a passion, I have a couple friends who do have some larger podcasts and they've been doing it for 10, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have actually been traveling with my wife and 3 little boys for the last 7 years.
I saw that. What'd you do to
yeah.
retire at 36?
I sold a construction company. So I had 3 construction companies, that were packaged together. And I sold, in the beginning, I sold 20. And then a few months later, I sold another 20. And I ended up selling total 65%.
Okay.
And so I
still have
took
minor ownership in it.
Yep. So I have 35% ownership in it. And then I took that money and I bought rental properties. So I bought 8 rental properties here in St. George. Have you ever been to St. George?
My wife has a bunch, but I have not.
Okay, you'll have to get up here. We'll get you up here.
Yeah.
So I bought 8 rental properties. It's all a long story, but bought a couple, as I went along, and paid them off. And so when I ended up leaving, I was 36, and I had the 8 condos, and then some cash from the sale of the company, and then I dividends and whatnot from the companies. So went and did that for, like I said, 7 years minus COVID. Even during COVID, we road tripped the U.S. for 6 months, but mostly during COVID, we were just kind of hunkered down at my parents' ranch.
Yeah.
And anyway, and so my kids are getting older. My boys are 9 and 12 and 3 now. They need a social life. They need to have, some relationships and some experiences that aren't just travel. And so this December, we decided we're going to come back and get a dog and live quote unquote a normal life, regular life. Yeah. And so I started this company. I had the idea for a couple of years and just want to get people, outside more, it's not, I'm big into hunting. So I do a lot of hunting, but I love everything. I was a snowboard instructor in Park City, raced dirt bikes in high school. And so I just love everything outdoors. And I think, it's needed. There's so many people in cities and, even in the country or whatever, but who just, get behind screens and just kind of sit on the couch. And so when Renz came to me about you, and he just says, man, the dude's awesome. He's just, obviously it's the surfing, the reason we're talking is kind of the surfing, because that's, I've never surfed. I've actually never surfed. I tried it with Renz in Costa Rica and Hawaii, both times with Renz, and just I'm 6'5", and
okay.
He had a little board.
Renz isn't a little boy either, though. I mean,
he's a big boy too.
Yeah.
So I just couldn't get up, just didn't understand it, but I love it and respect it. And so, yeah, man, that's just kind of where I'm at too. This podcast and all of this is, I don't need a job. Thankfully, I don't have to work still. And so I thought, man, if I can find a job where I can interview people. I interviewed a guy this morning, another guy. I've got 2 interviews tomorrow. Just people who are living life, and it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. So yeah, kind of fill me in on, tell me a little bit about yourself so we can get to know each other.
Yeah, let me turn this fan off just in case, or turn it down so you can't hear it.
Okay, you're good.
I got landscaping.
You're in San Diego, right?
Yeah, I'm in San Diego. So I am in North County, coastal San Diego. So Encinitas.
Okay.
Um, my wife and I bought this place less than a year ago. We bought it in November. But kind of like originally I'm from Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
kind of
Okay.
like tying the storyline all together of like adventure, outdoors, getting outside. So I grew up in a small town of like 3,000 people, 20 minutes outside of the town on a lake.
Wow.
Um, so I learned to water ski and wakeboard and scuba dive and all sailing, all that stuff very young. And the vast majority of it self-taught. Like my first sailboats I ever got, I was around 12 years old. I worked at a marina in the summertime. I started full-time work when I was like 11, 12 years old in the summer. Come to find out, didn't know that was illegal until many,
Yeah.
many years
Yeah.
afterwards. But hey,
Yeah.
a
I
small
love
town,
that.
paid cash under
Yeah.
the
I love
table, didn't
that.
matter.
That's yeah.
Um, but so I would ride my bike the mile or whatever in Marina, and I passed this
Is this
guy's.
the Great Lake? Is this the Great
No, this
what?
is called Whitewater.
Okay, Whitewater. Okay.
So the
Gotcha.
town is Whitewater. The lake I grew up on was Whitewater Lake.
Okay. Awesome.
1,400 acres. So like pretty big in like the scheme of
Yeah.
landmass, but not
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
big in Wisconsin lakes kind of thing. Like it's
Yeah.
a small lake,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
uh
we'd kill for that in southern Utah, but yeah, that's
yeah.
yeah.
That's just, and it was actually a farmer's field that they dammed up and let it flood.
That's
And
awesome.
that guy, speaking of real estate, took the money when the state bought it, and he owns like 60% of the rental properties in my whole hometown, and it's a college
Wow.
town, so like he just prints
It's
money in
killing
this
it.
town.
Just killing
Yeah,
it. I love
yeah.
that.
Was a farmer in the 1800s, and now his great grandson is the richest kid.
I love that. I
Um,
love those stories.
So me, like my first sailboat, I rode my bike across next to this guy's house, every day in the summertime, and the boat never moved. I saw him in his front yard one, and I was like, "Hey man, what do you do with this boat?" I'm 12, I got no filter. I'm like, "I've never seen it move, and I've lived here my whole life." He's like, "Son, if you can get this off my property, it's yours." And I had my bike. I just threw my bike down on the side of the road, picked up the trailer by the tongue. It had flat tires, but I walked it home like the half
That's
mile.
awesome. That's
My mom was
awesome.
like, "Did you steal this?" And I was like, "No, the guy said I could have it. Like, I promise." And she like, we went
Came home with a
back.
boat. I
Uh-huh.
love
Yeah,
it.
went back, and my mom was like, "Did my son steal your boat?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Actually, here's like the mast, here's the sails, here's the other stuff. Like, you can have it."
That's rad.
And so that's, I lived for summer vacation. Growing outside of the town, I didn't have many close friends. And so it was just my brothers and I in the lake and just getting out and doing adventures 24/7, working hard. And
And that's a
so,
small window, right? I have some buddies who live in Minnesota, and we actually invite him up to Alaska every year to come up and fish with us. And he's like, "Bro, I don't leave Minnesota in the summer. That's our lake time. That's
yeah,
pontoons and
yeah.
fireworks."
It,
But it's a
it's,
short,
uh,
I mean, there's a short season there.
It's now living in San Diego for over 12 years,
Yeah.
13 years now.
Yeah.
I kind of relate it to like Stockholm syndrome, where like you fall in love with your captor. Of like winter is so brutal that summer is just like that much more magical.
That's a good point.
You
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
through that struggle of, there were, months on end, weeks on end where like the only time you saw the sun was it when it got under -10 degrees. Other than that, it's gray and cloudy and overcast and snow and being a high energy ADH kid, I tried hunting when I was 12. The shotgun was as big as I was, and I couldn't sit still in the tree. So I started going like, making those noises. And my uncle on the radio was like, "Yo, kid, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
You're scaring all the animals away." And I'm just sitting there going like,
Yeah.
"Well, this is terrible."
This
Like
yeah.
trapped in a tree 30 feet
That's
in the
how
air
much
waiting for a
yeah.
deer to go by. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
miserable.
Yeah.
So I never did it again.
Yeah, yeah. I have a son like that who's like, he's like, this is, what are we doing? I'm like, this is it. We just wait. And he's like, how long? I'm like, I don't know, as long as it takes. And he's like, nah, I'm good. I'm out.
Yeah.
Peace. You know, and I'm like, all right, cool. You don't have to do it.
The only thing that I really remember, there was the two like interesting parts of that hunting trip was there was a tree stump on the ground that I had somehow twisted in my mind that it was a rabbit. Now, mind you, it's deer season. I'm not allowed to shoot the rabbit anyways, but I'm like, I think it's an animal. I need to kill this thing. Like, this is what we're here to do, right? And luckily I didn't pull the trigger or anything like that. But like went through
That's
so many
awesome.
different hoops
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like, it's a rabbit. It just is in
Yeah,
there, like,
emotions. Yeah.
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 That and then when we someone else shot a deer and we were following the blood trail. And like
Mm-hmm.
that was exhilarating. Like
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
until we
wild.
lost it in a private farm and we couldn't go on their property. But like, just
Oh yeah.
tracking the blood trail was like the coolest thing.
That's
Um
crazy.
yeah, so small town, three brothers, single mom, grew up on a lake. And then uh because we're going to talk about finances and stuff like that as well. Like it was, I grew up in my grandparents' basement.
Okay.
Luckily it was on a lake, so there was some benefit to it. But like my mom still to this day hasn't really made more than like $45,000 a year,
Mhm.
and was raising four kids. And today she
Single
now
mom, your
has,
dad wasn't around?
yes, single mom, dad wasn't around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's tough.
Um, Yeah, and it's even more awkward because it was like an unhealthy relationship in small town. He owned the hardware in the store, and so like we'd bump into him here and there, and it's super awkward.
Mm.
But why that's important is later down the road. But essentially, my mom to this day now owns like $4 million. Well, actually more, probably like $5 million in real estate free and clear, and it's probably pulling in
Wow.
15K a month just in rental
Wow.
income.
That's amazing.
And and that is not because we had money or we made we just never really made any good money, and all the money
Yeah,
went out
not got
raising
lucky.
us.
I hear that a lot. You got lucky and it's like I will punch you in the mouth, man. Like
It was
it was
small
hard work.
purchases.
Hard work,
Yeah,
hard
and it was
work
small
and dedication.
purchases. Yep, she had
I
her
love
real
it.
estate license and she bought one house, leveraged it into another, leveraged it into another, and eventually, had enough money to buy a multifamily property in San Diego about a year or so after I moved here.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
and so now that property is worth like $3 million, paid off free and clear. Like it's
That's
insane.
amazing. Yeah.
Um, to kind of pass that back, is while I was growing up, the only thing I was really good at was sports. I got really good into wrestling. Walked on my college wrestling team. Made the starter. And then my sophomore year, I traveled abroad to go to Australia. And that trip really changed my life because it was like, oh my God, like different cultures, different places. I lived on a
Got out
boat
you
for
got out of
5 days. Yeah,
the bubble, right? You got out of that bubble
exactly.
and just realized
Yeah.
that's when I first left. It was the same thing where it's like you get so focused on, like you said, all the drama and the girls in your town and the buddies in your town, and then you leave and it's like, whoa, that is such a little piece of
Yeah.
reality.
You can
What
reinvent
made you do
yourself,
that? What made you do that? Like, what was the
go to
how
Australia.
did you? Yeah.
Always had wanderlust. As a family, we did a lot of camping. And um, one of the kids in my high school, his mom taught at like the rich town. She was like a biology teacher, and uh, she actually created a joint program between the two schools to do like a marine biology trip.
Oh wow,
And my sophomore year in high school, we went to Costa Rica for a biology trip.
that's awesome.
I didn't take any I didn't do any of the extracurricular courses or anything like that to get credit for it. I was just like, wait, I can go to Costa Rica for 2 weeks with like my friend from high school? Like, heck yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And on that trip, that is the trip that like literally the seed that pushed me on the trajectory of where I am today, because there was a
Mm.
guy, probably mid-20s, getting his master's degree. He had like thigh high rubber boots on, short camo shorts, and like a PFG fishing gear shirt kind of thing on. And I'm
Uh-huh.
14 going, this guy lives in the jungle of Costa Rica. Like, how do I be that guy? Like, I want to
Yeah.
do that for a living. Like, I want to, like,
Yeah.
so, you go down the rabbit hole, marine biologists and all of those different things. But that trip really, really, really put the bug in me for travel. 2 years later, we went to the Bahamas for the same school trip type thing. And so,
Just hooked.
yeah, I was hooked, and I wanted to go into the military. My grandfather was drafted into Korea and said, "No, son, you're not going to the military. That's not an option for you."
Mm.
So I'm like, "All right, well then, I guess I should probably go to school." And I didn't apply. I literally just applied to my hometown, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And so I tried joining the soccer team, but the soccer players were kind of douchebags.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, well, let's try this wrestling team. And so I tried out for the wrestling team. And like I said, I made it. It was a starter. I did fairly well. And then studied abroad in Australia my sophomore year, came back with, getting better, getting after it. And then it broke my neck.
Oh, wow.
And so
It,
the whole reason of
and
like
what, like
being
a
in
car wreck
school,
or something, or what?
no practice, wrestling practice.
Oh, wrestling. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Crazy.
essentially I was dropped on my head while grappling with someone about 50 or so pounds heavier than me. It landed right on top of me, and I don't remember which ones, but C4 and 5 or whatever smashed together and shattered. Non-displaced hairline fractures is what I was told. But I blacked out, woke up 30 seconds later, arm tingling, numb, tingling, tongue was completely numb. And I was like, whoa, that was
Oh, that's
wild. Like,
terrifying.
you've probably had a stinger before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But
Playing
never my
football or
tongue,
whatever.
you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
I just thought
Yeah.
it was like a really, really bad one of those. So I was like,
Yeah.
all
Wow.
right, whatever. It's like, took like a
Shake
week
it
or
off.
two off, shook it off, went back to practice. And for about 3 months straight, I would black out probably 3 or 4 times a day in practice, where I'd completely lights off, wake up flat on my back, arms tingling, numb tongue. Just be like, wow, dude, this stinger just will not go away. Like, what's
That
going
is
on?
crazy. Never went to the hospital, like like in the beginning,
No,
didn't.
no, dude, just hard-nosed Midwest
Yeah.
wrestler with
Yeah. Shake it
freaking
off.
way too
Yeah.
much testosterone to throw
Oh my
around. Yeah.
gosh. That's
So,
crazy.
but I
Walking around with a
finally
broken
went,
neck.
yeah, I finally went to a chiropractor because I thought, well, something's got to be out of alignment, something pinching. And they're like, son, you have two options. Like, you broke your neck. You can either walk for the rest of your life, or you can continue doing what you're doing and become a quadriplegic, because like you're shutting yourself off from your neck down every time you black out.
Wow. That's
So
wild.
I quit the wrestling team. It was 2008. Everybody in my major was freaking out about what job they were going to get. And I, for the first time, had to like think about the future instead of
Mm.
just like, when's my next match? When's my next class? When's my next test? It was like, all right, what am I doing with my life in this small town that I never wanted to stay in the first place? Like, I should go travel. What's a cool job that you can do anywhere in the world with a certification in any country? I was like, oh, scuba diving. And so I was in class, and I Googled scuba diving schools, and I picked the one with the prettiest website.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not the best criteria, but it was
Yeah.
2008. If you
Yeah.
put some
Yeah.
money into a
Yeah.
website, you must be good
That's
at what you
right,
do,
man. They gotta
right?
be
Like,
doing good. That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
moved to Thailand, and
Wow.
I lived there for 6 months, and I got scuba certification there,
What
and
part?
it was Pattaya.
Okay.
So if you know, were you
We
in the
we went over
Marines
there
or the
for a
Navy or
month.
anything?
Yeah, we just went over there and traveled with my kids and stuff, but we went to
Oh,
like
okay.
Phuket and just kind
Yeah.
of the touristy places. We stayed in is it Bangkok? Yeah.
Bangkok is the main city, yeah. So
But yeah,
Pattaya, for those people
I've
who
never heard of
are
that.
fun with history, is
Hmm.
the only reason it exists on the map, besides it being like a small podunk town,
Hmm.
was this thing called the Vietnam War. And it was a small podunk town. And so the Navy and the Marines were like, all right, how do we get our soldiers away from everybody and have an R&R? And so they brought them to Pattaya. Well, that now
Interesting.
is the sex capital of the world. with one of the most notorious red light districts.
Connect the dots.
So
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
when I was there, I didn't know any of that stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm a
Yeah.
well-traveled guy. I've been to Australia. I've been to Costa Rica. I've been all over the place. I
Right.
get there and not, 5 minutes of being dropped off in Pattaya, you're getting solicited by lady boys, and
Yeah.
yeah, it
Uh,
was massive culture shock.
I bet. Yeah.
But
And
it was
you went over
cool.
alone? You were alone?
Alone, knew
That's
nobody, knew
crazy,
nothing, never been to the
man. That's so cool.
country.
I love it.
Yeah. So, um, after I got my certification, I was like, I need to get the heck out of here. This is not my vibe. This is not my style. And so I actually had two job offers. One was in Kona on the Big Island of Hawaii, and one was at the Ritz-Carlton in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. I chose the U.S. Virgin Islands because they were going to pay hourly, and Kona was 100% commission. And I'm like, I'm not a salesperson. Like, I don't want
Hmm.
anything to do with that. Like, if I at least show up to work, I'll get paid,
Yeah.
15 bucks an
Yep.
hour or whatever it was.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and that's what was the determining factor for me to move to the Virgin Islands. So
Yeah,
I
makes
lived
sense.
there for 3 years. I ended up getting my 100-ton U.S. Coast Guard captain's license. And I was captaining sailboats. I was teaching sailing scuba diving, and I was working probably 3 to 4 days a week, making more money than I've ever made in my life, and just being a pirate,
I love it.
living the best life. I
Yeah,
didn't
I
wear
love it.
shoes for years. I
Yeah.
had my hair down to here,
Yeah.
long blonde curly hair. I was, tan
Yeah.
as leather, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was awesome. I had a
I
great
love
time.
it. Yeah.
So,
So
uh,
did you surf at all there, or when did that kind of come into play?
it did. So that's actually where I learned to surf.
You'd never surfed
Um,
before then?
like one day at Waikiki,
Yeah, like us all.
like
Grabbed a,
everybody else.
paid the
Yeah,
20 bucks and went out on a board and got rolled.
went out on a foam board and yeah, like
Mm.
um, so a couple of guys were from North Carolina and grew up surfing, and so it was a frustrating, but in the long run, good learning experience because it was like, here's a board, we're going out. Keep up with me if you can, kind of thing. And that kid probably burned me on every single wave for like a year straight before like I could confidently paddle into wave, get up, and like
What
it
does
was
burn you mean? What does burn me mean?
yeah. Um,
Took
so
it from
like
you?
yes.
Took the
So
wave because yeah.
yeah. So like in surfing, think of like a mound, right? If you're drawing on
Hmm.
a piece of paper, like like sine wave kind of thing,
Okay.
with just one loop. The peak of the wave or the peak of that line is, the person closest to that point is like the takeoff point. So where it's steepest, where you see like the wave crest over, you see the whitewash crumbling, and then if it's an A frame, the wave goes both left and right, or is it just a left, just a right? But whoever's closest to the peak, closest to like the white crumbling water, like they're the one who had like the right of way. They're in the best position. And
Okay.
so like burning, snaking, back paddling are all local terms of like burning is where I'm closer to the peak and someone like drops in on me on the shoulder and just takes the wave. They burn out in front of kind of thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's disrespectful and you shouldn't do it unless you're the local and blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah whatever. There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of localism and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah,
Well, that's a big reason, that I don't, like I said, I've gone to Costa Rica. We go down there every year, and been down there for weeks on the beach in great surfing spots. I don't even know what that
yeah.
looks like, but Renz comes down. He's like, dude, this is like world famous for surfing.
Oh yeah.
And
Sure.
and I don't even try because I think most of it for me is one, the ocean. You got to respect it. You can get in trouble pretty quick. And I just haven't grown up around it. But the other thing is the etiquette. Like I see 50 guys out there. I come down to San Diego and I see, I'm on the pier and I see 30 people down in the water. And to me, it's just chaos. And I'd go down there and
Yeah.
I know I would just piss people off. They'd want to fight me. It's like all these different things. And so that I think intimidates the heck out of me to go start.
Yeah. So like how to start surfing. Again, from Wisconsin, didn't start surfing until I
Yeah, I
was
love that.
22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
36 now, so 13-ish years of surfing. And to be honest, like the nice thing is like I'm fairly athletic. So I'm still getting better, like much, much better.
Mm,
In the last like 3 to 5 years, I've progressed so much more than, the first like 8 to 10 years.
mm.
But like how to start surfing, because I'm told I can nerd out on like shape and volume and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll start with like basic 101.
Mm-hmm.
Is like if you're going to a surf town, and you've never gone surfing, like pay the local guide to take you out and take the surf lesson.
Okay.
A good surf instructor is going to give you the basics, the principles, and it's usually only a couple hours, hour to 2 hour lesson, not that
Mm-hmm.
expensive. And like the 120, $200 is going to include the surfboard, a wetsuit, and some tips and tricks about it. So the other thing that's like important about it is that like surf schools need, if they're in the state, they need permits to operate on the beach. And most of those people who start surf schools are dedicated surfers. It's
Okay.
usually not
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
high paying job. It's one of those like a passion job that you make money and pay your bills with.
Yes.
And so they're going to take you to local beginner break. And so there's, everything is based on nature and how big the natural environment is happening, but still there's going to be like a few spots out there that are slopier, softer, mellower, slower moving waves. And the surf schools usually operate in those areas. And so
The
that's like kind of
bottoms,
like
the bottoms sand, that's always one thing that scares me is
typically,
like surfing over coral. I don't know how you guys, I just don't even understand how that happens, where you're surfing over coral and it's like you have to wreck shallow,
yeah.
it's just, oh my gosh. It is one of the, because we were just in Hawaii with me and my wife for a couple weeks, and I just go around and I just am in awe of surfers. I don't know I think it's because I was like I said, I taught snowboarding and was an instructor
Mhm.
and I grew up around that. So I kind of, correlate them. But man, surfing to me is wild. It is just a whole nother level of crazy.
So I can give you, I've snowboarded before, and a surfing legend, Jerry Lopez, Mr. Pipeline, one of the most dangerous waves in the world, was probably the best surfer of pipeline in the 70s. Picked up, left the North Shore of Oahu and moved to Oregon. And now he snowboards and does yoga more than anything. I don't think he surfs here and there, but definitely
Wow, just left
snowboards
it.
more. Yeah, which is pretty wild.
That is
But
wild.
his experience of snowboarding is the like when you're on a big virgin powder route can be similar to say like carving down a wave surfing. Um, but like the main difference between a lot of other sports out there that you participate in is a skate park. The half pipe doesn't move.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
mountain isn't undulating unless it's an avalanche
Hmm.
and you gotta get out of there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
but
That's when you're
the
surfing.
yeah, the interesting thing about surfing is it's summertime here in the northern hemisphere. Our southern swells are being produced in like the roaring 40s off of New Zealand.
No way.
So our surf that we are surfing is from a storm off the coast of New Zealand that takes
That is
about a week
awesome.
to get to us. And so you
I love
have,
that. In San
um,
Diego.
yes.
In San Diego.
So summertime, it's New Zealand. Wintertime, it's Russia, where the storms
Mm,
are forming off of.
mm,
And when you become a surfer, you become a mild amateur meteorologist.
mm.
And you learn a lot about like the bathymetry, which is just a fancy way of saying underwater topography. So what the ground is doing underwater, because like those things are going to determine like what type of wave you're going to be riding.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so when you have a localized storm off of New Zealand, you have short interval chaos energy, and the energy waves that make it all the way to the west coast of California are the long period, well organized well patterns. And so um, it goes from chaos really far away, and that energy is moving from south to north. And as it's getting further away from its original storm, it's only the long period waves are able to travel that far of a distance.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And so
It's
in
like throwing a
the
rock in the pond, right where you throw the rock, it's just
Mhm.
a splash.
Yeah.
But 50 feet away, that wave's just worked its way out to just, and that's what
And
you're riding. So,
if you pay attention to that ripple, the
mm-hmm,
ripples are very close together when you first drop
mm-hmm,
the pebble, and you
mm-hmm.
go, 100, 200 feet away, and you'll notice that
Yeah.
ripple is now 3 inches long, and you dropped
Yeah.
a quarter
Yeah.
pound, whatever, rock into the water.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what's happening just in the ocean.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, and so kind of taking that like nerd out of science of how we're getting the waves, and like the feeling that you get that is different, that is hard to replicate anywhere else, is that you are riding an energy source that was created thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Yeah, that's
And
beautiful.
every single wave is different. Even if you're, on a perfect sand bottom point break where it's consistent as heck, there's different micro things that are happening on the wave that no two waves are ever the same. They can be very
Mm.
similar, but nothing is the same. And so you are literally harnessing the energy of nature and riding it until the energy dissipates out.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You're riding something that is there for a moment and then never going to be recreated exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
And
cool
so
way to look at it.
that's that little extra wave of like, I've skateboarded, I've snowboarded, I've done all these other things. And, this is where like the rise of wave pools have come up, is professionals are using them at like skate parks, because you can do the same maneuver 1,000 times in a row because the
Mm.
wave is engineered to be perfect, so you can practice. But like if you're only surfing in nature, like the barrel, so getting inside the tube of the wave and like threading that needle, it's incredibly difficult. There is a
Yeah,
lot of
can imagine.
energy. Chaos can happen in there. Hit the lip, hits your head, get cartwheels underwater, like all kinds of stuff. You know, in order to try to practice that, it is so difficult because like in San Diego, only barreling when it gets like really big. And so you
Mm.
can't practice that if you're new, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that's why it's like it's a really hard thing to like practice and repeat and get better at, because nothing is consistent. And so you try to perfect the mechanisms of carving and turning and doing all the things
The
on
basics.
an imperfect surface that is always changing. And you can kind of see, you got to get really good at staring at water, which is a funny thing
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, like if you watch a good surfer, if it's not their home break and they're like trying to figure out like what they're gonna do, they'll sit on the beach and they'll watch the waves for 5 to 35, maybe an hour, to see like what's going on out in the ocean. Um, and you can learn a lot by like looking at the wave and watching how it's moving, how quickly it's moving down the line. Like, is it steep? Is it soft? So you want to really like pay attention to like looking at the water and like knowing that like when it starts doing this, so it's like it gets more concave and curvature, like it's hitting a shallower part of the bottom. And so there's going to be more energy in that wave. And so then it's like, all right, what do I do with this more energy that's coming at me? Do I like go around it? Do I turn? Do I like look into the barrel? Like all of these things that take
You just,
years of
yeah, just
staring at
learn.
water to like understand like, hey, at this surf break, when it looks like this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. I was just in Hawaii. We were there with, there's like 15 of us and, we were hunting. We were on Molokai.
Oh, nice.
And
Were you
we're
going for
like, hey, let's
access
go.
deer?
Yeah. And we're like, hey, let's go to the beach and just play, just go play in the waves. And we've gone to this beach a few years in a row, and it's been fine. It's a shore break, right?
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand. And so they're like, it's you just got to kind of be careful there. So we go walking up, and we come walking up, and one of my buddies just runs out into the ocean. And I'm sitting there like, man, these waves look a little bit bigger to me today, you know. And I'm kind of sitting there, and I've been there a few times, and this one guy hadn't. He just went right out, just like you said, he just went out.
Okay.
And we're sitting there looking at it, and all of a sudden, and explain this to me, because I don't know if this is true or not, but everybody says waves come in sets. So I don't understand that. Why would they come in a set? What makes them change every 8 or whatever waves? But anyway, he went out there for 5 or 6 waves. Everything was fine. And then all of a sudden these huge ones come in and just start rolling him. And he got his ass kicked, you know, rolled him up the beach. And he's like, what the hell happened? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. But, you know, we got to pay attention and see, because the ocean changes and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I can understand that, to where, like you said, every time I go to the beach, every time, even in San Diego, I sit there just as a swimmer and with my kids playing, and I'm like, okay, what's this thing doing? Is it going to drag them out? Is there a riptide?
Yeah.
You know, is there, you know, just kind of seeing. So I can't imagine as a surfer to go out there and be like, I see those waves like in North Shore. We were out there just sitting on the beach watching these guys. It is terrifying, you know, to me.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, man, I've been in these little San Diego waves, and I'm 6'5", 250 pounds, and it throws me around like a doll. I can't imagine these 12, 15-foot waves, what is happening in them.
And to take that specific thing into like how much you are a rag doll is, how much does a gallon of water weigh?
Yeah, 8 pounds.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
8 pounds,
That's
right?
a gallon. So if you have a 2-foot wave that is 1 foot thick, right?
Yeah.
That is a lot of gallons of water. And that's only a 2-foot wave. You know,
That's
if
a
you're
good
talking to a
point.
surfer,
That's a
maybe
very
shimmed a knee high. You know, that's an ankle slapper, you know? And so like, that's where you see, if you follow on Instagram, like kook clams. It's hilarious. If you haven't seen it, give it a good follow if you want a good giggle.
How do you spell that?
Kook, slam, SLAM.
Okay.
So kook is a term for beginner, a newbie, someone who, and like, it doesn't have to be surfing. It's someone who's doing something that is inappropriate or inexperienced. And yeah, like you can kook anything, right? You can be kooky.
Okay. I like that.
Surf term. It's a fun
Okay.
one. So kind of going back to the Hawaii thing. So, and sets, Hawaii is a very interesting one. It's the most remote island landmass in the entire world.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize that the big island of Hawaii with Mauna Kea is actually the tallest mountain in the world from base to summit, even taller than Mount Everest.
That's wow.
Because if you think about Everest is a mountainous plateau. And so you have like a lot of steps, but like Mauna Kea is one mountain from the sea floor all the way up to the top as one continuous slope. So when you're talking energy waves, which we'll get into sets, you know, coming from really far off, and in a surfer's mindset,
where's the North Shore waves coming from? So that would be like,
yeah, so you
Japan
have like,
or something.
You know, no, it's the same. It's all the same. So Oahu,
they're
like
coming from New
Hawaii,
Zealand.
Yeah, they're all coming from like the same direction. It's like, so it depends on like where you are on the island compared to what direction the swell's coming in.
Yeah,
and then like
right.
Hawaii's interesting in the sense of like there's multiple an island chain. And so like the North Shore of Oahu is the 7 Mile Miracle is what it's called, is unique because it's one of the older islands. So there's a lot more erosion and degradation of the entire mountain range in comparison to Hawaii, which is the newest island. And so Hawaii is at the base, and then you have a bunch of islands coming off at a curvature. And so, you know, you can be in a shadow of the other islands. So if the swell direction is coming from way, you know, it's going to hit, you know, these islands unobstructed. If it's coming this way, it's going to hit those islands unobstructed. And so like winter swell, which is when when Oahu and North Shore is going up, it is like, you know, if you got the island going this way, it is the most northernly exposed island, and it is old enough where it has a little bit more the bathymetry has changed and it's moved, and it's been pounded by the surf for years. But what makes that more dangerous, more fun, heavier, hollower waves is you have uninterrupted swell. So if you think of, again, dropping that rock into a pond, and you have a fish tank, right?
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
perfectly smooth. Everything is there. And let's say it's, 2 inches of water, right? And you drop it, the ripples are going to move consistently across. Well, if you put something in that fish pond, obstructing its way, the energy waves, because you're only seeing the top portion of that sine wave of the
Mm,
energy. And so
mm.
if you put something here, the bottom half of that comes up against something, and then, the
Changes it.
wave changes. Yeah, exactly. So what you have
That's
in
so
Hawaii
wild.
is thousands of miles of unobstructed energy coming towards it, and a very sharp from deep to shallow. So the energy actually builds up and does not get impeded until it
Mm,
reaches shore. Where
mm,
if you think of East Coast, and they're historically have terrible surf unless it is hurricane swell, is because they have that huge Atlantic shelf. And so any of the
mm.
storms that are produced in the Atlantic, when the energy is coming towards the East Coast of the United States, it hit that shelf hundreds of miles out, and it loses so much of its energy because it's going from deep water and dragging over shallow water
Mm,
for
mm.
100 miles before it hits the coast.
There you go.
And
I've always
so,
wondered that why there's not,
yeah,
big surfing spots on the East Coast. I know the waves are smaller. I just didn't understand it.
yeah. So it has
I
to
love
do
that
with
stuff. I love
energy
that stuff.
sources, the bathymetry of the sea floor. And
Wow,
that's
there's
why you see
so
like
much more.
Portugal. Portugal is deep continental shelf, and that's where you have one of the biggest waves in the world, which is Nazare, which is kind of close to Lisbon in Portugal. And again, it
Okay.
has, deep Atlantic channel. And then the European continent is right there, and Portugal sticks furthest out, and it goes from
Mm.
very deep water to shallow water, and it funnels into this beach, and it produces waves of like 80 feet
Oh
um,
my
on
God.
record.
That's
There's been
crazy.
bigger waves, but like 80 foot is kind of like the biggest wave on record that's ever been surfed.
That's
I think
crazy.
actually it's like 68 or 70, I don't know, something like that. There's some German dude who owed the world record of the largest wave ever surfed, which is kind of funny.
And he lived?
But yeah, Nizar is a wild wave. You got towed into it, so
Yeah.
that's a whole nother
Yeah.
rabbit hole we could go down.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so like
Dang, man.
yeah, is again
There is
where you become like
so
a
much.
amateur
I love it.
meteorologist.
Honestly, it makes me more excited. I'm kind of one of those guys who I like the details and I like it gives you a reason. Like I was just in Hawaii, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this beautiful view and beautiful waves, but I could really dive into what you're
Yeah.
talking about. That makes me more interested to learn why this is happening. That would pull me into the sport more.
Well, and the other thing too, which I was going to bring up is the more archaeologists are finding, because like coastal indigenous tribes are harder to study because like the glacial melt and the rise and fall of the sea level and where the shoreline was. So it's kind of hard to like again, if the ice age and the water levels were lower and the shoreline's way out here, all that
It's
stuff is
gone. It's
maybe
underwater.
exactly hundreds of miles or 10 miles or whatever it is underwater, so like we've lost a lot of that history. But everywhere that archaeologists have gone and done studies of coastlines that haven't been changed much, find local populations who have been doing some sort of wave sliding, wave riding, enjoying the waves, that go back thousands of years. So
That's
Hawaiians
awesome.
are credited in most realms as like the creators of surf.
Hmm.
But they've found reed boats, more of like a reed bound together, big
Surfboard.
swooping nosed surfboard, essentially in
Yeah.
Peru,
Oh,
and
that's rad.
in China. There's depictions of people surfing waves and like thousands of years ago, and so it is just
Wow.
something that like as a human being we are drawn to water, and we are drawn to the coastal the areas because of so many
Yeah,
different things. Plentiful food,
absolutely.
usually good
Hmm.
farming, wildlife is
Travel.
going to be there, hunting, all that kind of good stuff. Then they become sacred places. The cool thing about Hawaii is, I'm a light nerd of Hawaii as well, is they have this, it's called Auapua'a. It is a farming and cultural setup to kind of create laws and rules and regulations with nature. And because Hawaii is very mountainous with big ravines and valleys, there'd be entire tribes in a valley between, two high ridges that was the tribe, and they would
Hmm.
rarely ever interact with other tribes. And so they created this watershed farming culture where if you're up in the mountains, you do X. If you're down in the valley, you do Y. And if you're on the coast, you do
Interesting.
Z. So fishing, farming, hunting, water gathering, harvesting wood, all that kind of good stuff. And so the entire culture and the
Village. Yeah,
entire
work together.
village is working it together in one valley.
I love
Um,
that.
and there's fish farms that are 900 1,000 years old in Hawaii that are still being used to this day. They would build with the lava stones, they would build a pond, and they would build it with holes about the size of a baseball in it on purpose, because the reef fish would swim into the pond
Mm. Mm. It's
when
almost,
they
it's a
were
trap.
small. Exactly. It's a natural
That's
trap. They
awesome.
would swim in when they're
Yeah.
small. They would get fed with the ecosystem that the humans had contained. And then they would get so big. And then when nature would tell them to go back out to sea, they
They
couldn't.
couldn't.
And so it was
That's the problem I
literally
would have. That's what I have at the buffet.
yeah. Yeah.
Can't
So
get
it
out
was a
the door.
self-sustaining grocery store. And so
Yeah,
they were
that's
so
rad.
efficient with their farming techniques that they were able to, they would have seasons of war, seasons of farming, and seasons of holiday. And
Wow.
and
That's
so there would
wild.
be, you'd be in the middle of a war and it'd be like, nope, sorry, you guys got to put that down right now. We're on
It's
vacation now, and we'll pick that back up when vacation season's over.
I love that.
Um, Now again, I
That's
don't know how
awesome.
100%
Yeah,
accurate that
yeah,
is, but that's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what
That's
white
the
people have
idea.
interpreted from what they found.
Yeah, yeah.
But so they were known for having this leisure time and becoming, very proficient wave riders and surfers. And so the culture of surfing, from modern day surfing, is accredited to Hawaii. And then Duke Kahanamoku, who was a Hawaiian gentleman who actually competed in the Olympics and was an Olympic gold
Mm,
medal swimmer.
yeah,
And
wow.
so we were trying to promote swimming and the Olympics in early 1900s, late 1800s. And so Duke, as the American gold medal winner, would go around and give demonstrations. But him being the surfer, anywhere there was waves, he would figure out a way to craft some sort of something, and he would start surfing. And so, the folklore goes that he comes to San Diego and he, shows the local people how to surf here, and like they kind of take it from there and run with it. And
Mm-hmm.
because
That's
San
cool.
Diego has been a big military town in like the surfboard, shortboard revolution in like the 60s and 70s, airplanes and the Air Force base, or not the Air Force, the Navy base with the airplanes and stuff like that here. This guy named Bob Simmons was an engineer for the military, and on his free time he would surf. And so he started shaping surfboards using the engineering principles that he learned in the military and being an engineer to make the surfboards more efficient, because
Mm,
everything used to be about foam and volume and large board. Kind of going back to how do you start surfing, is you
mm-hmm.
need a big board. I don't care if
Mm-hmm.
you're the most athletic person in the world and you're small and you don't weigh much, you need foam, because surfing isn't like snowboarding. Like once you're strapped in, you're standing there, you go down the hill, like you can kind of like, you're
You got
you're
to get up. You
focusing
got to get
on
up
the
on it.
carving. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which you said you've experienced as well, is like 80% of
Yes.
surfing is actually paddling into waves
Oh, wow.
and
That's good to
knowing which
know.
wave to paddle into.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
because
So that's
I couldn't figure that part out. But I thought that was 20%. I would have thought that's
no.
the beginning, and then the rest is writing the board. But yeah, it makes sense. If you can't get into the wave right, you're
Go
not going
back
to
and
write
think.
it.
Go back and think about the last time you were in Hawaii and you were watching surfers.
Yeah.
And if you were to think about watching just one surfer, not one surfer, not surfing, surfing
Hmm.
almost, especially in a popular place of surfing like Hawaii, is that there's not going to be a single wave unridden. Someone is
Hmm.
catching every single wave, whether it trash closes out, whatever, like someone's trying to catch it and ride that thing. But if you were to watch and follow one particular surfer, they're going to be sitting and talking and looking at the ocean more than they're actually surfing itself. I mean, like an incredibly long barrel ride or just a ride in general is in the seconds.
Mm.
You're talking
Yeah.
3 to 30 seconds of being
Yeah.
actually on the board. But I'll go surf for 2 to 4 hours and I'll accumulate, you know,
10
five
minutes on a
minutes.
wave, 5 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Surfing.
interesting.
So the
Yeah.
vast majority of it is actually like paddling into the waves, positioning yourself and figuring out, where you need to be sitting so that you can catch that energy that's coming from really far away. And then you want to meet it and match the speed. So like one of the first things that beginner surfers do wrong is on that big long board, they'll feel the tail of the surfboard pick up
And you think you're good.
and then they stop
You
paddling.
stop. You stop because
You
you're like, I'm
stop
on it.
paddling because
And
you're
then
like,
it
oh
goes
my
by.
gosh. And
That's
it goes,
exactly
and,
what kept
and what
happening.
happens is it rolls underneath you and that
Yep.
energy level passes you. So
Mm.
you need to think of it as like you need to match your speed with the wave's speed. And so,
That's a
like, when
good
I
point.
tell people when they're beginning in surfing, is that like when you think you're going fast enough and you've caught the wave, paddle one or two more times.
Mm.
Really stroke one or two more times because the nice thing about big long boards is inertia. Once your surfboard starts moving, it's very buoyant, it floats, it trims and
It's hard to slow
turns pretty
down.
well. It's hard to slow
Hmm.
down. So once you get that momentum, you can just lay on the board, not even stand up, and you can kind of carve back around, and so like that's like a good feeling is like if you stop paddling, you put your hands on the board, you push your chest up, and the board keeps moving, like you're in the wave. Like if you stop paddling and it just rolls underneath you, it's because you weren't going fast enough. You weren't in the right position. There wasn't enough energy to push you
Mm.
into the wave. And there's like so much of that is timing and skill, where you'll see someone who's been surfing for a really, really long time, where they'll be sitting on their board, even like a potato chip, tiny little board, and they'll turn, push the board underwater, lean forward, and be standing on the wave. They didn't even
Wow.
paddle once. And you're like, wait,
Wow.
how the because they were in the perfect spot. They, met the wave and they matched the energy, leaned into it, like,
Yeah.
so you see like old dudes on longboards who are sitting in the perfect spot. They'll turn that 9 foot board around,
Hmm.
push it underwater, do maybe one or two paddles, and then cruise right in. Well, that's
Mm.
because they're sitting in like that perfect space of where the wave isn't too steep, where you're going to bury the
Yeah.
nose and be
Yeah.
shot out the
Hmm.
back, and it's
Hmm.
not too shallow where like there's no energy. So the
Mm.
more energy there is in the wave, the faster you need to be moving in order to catch the wave and actually ride it.
Well, and I think I always, everything I do in life, it's like, well, how does this apply to, you know, how do I apply this to my
Life.
life,
Yeah.
hunting and all these things I do. And it's like, I can tell already, most people want, maybe not most people, but a lot of people want to take up a sport. My kids, are this way, where they take up a sport and they want to be good at it tomorrow, and it sounds like with surfing and from my couple times of experience, everybody, I that's what I love about it, because if it was easy, everybody would just go do it.
Yeah.
And I always use this analogy where it's like, man, I can't imagine if it was a lot easier to surf, how crowded the already crowded areas are.
Mhm.
And so just hearing you talk and tell, that's the thing that I love about this. And that's why I love talking to people like you, is you've gone so far down this, rabbit hole of surfing, that just listening to you, it's like, wow, I thought it was complex. it's like, wow, there's a 10th degree to this, you know. And talking to Renz again, the reason that we're talking today is from Renz. You know, he wants to travel the world solely to surf spots. And I'm like, you know, we were in Australia, and I sent him a photo. I'm like, dude, I'm at Bell's Beach, you know, and I'm looking, what is it, Bodie? You know,
Oldest
like,
running, yeah, the oldest running professional surf comp in the world.
is it really? I did not know that. Yeah, we were down there, and I just love Point Break. You know, it's just a
Yeah,
classic. And so I sent a message to Renz, and he's like, I cannot believe you're standing there. I can't believe you're on that beach. And I'm like, you know, and I don't appreciate where I'm at because I don't have that history and that knowledge and all that education. But
yeah,
that's what I love about travel, and that's what I love about things that make you travel. You know, I have a
yeah.
lot of friends who travel because of golf. You know, it's like, I don't like golf. I've tried it. I just don't care for it. But, you know, I have buddies who travel all over the world in golf, and I'm like, if that's what gets you out and gets you doing something, that's beautiful. And then to, like you saying, I can tell just, you know, from our conversation, you're a guy that I respect because you take it deeper than, you know, I don't go to Hawaii to kill a deer and then just walk off. It's like I go to eat their food and break bread with the people and see their sights and understand, you know, their culture. And I can tell, you know, you've taken that even further. And I love that. You know, that makes me excited towards, like, if I get into this sport, which we're starting to, you know, plan some retreats for next year in Costa Rica. And it's like, man, I'm excited. It gets me even more excited to where it's like, wow, there's a whole world out there of education. And you know, you always want to improve, you want to adapt, you want to change, you want
Hmm.
to, and man, from talking to you, it's like, wow, there is so much more than grabbing a, you know, piece of fiber. Are they fiberglass now? The
Foam with
most
fiberglass. Yeah,
foam with fiberglass. It's like there's a whole
yeah.
another realm to just grabbing a board. You know, when I'm there with Renz, I'm looking at it like, I'm gonna paddle out here. I hope a shark doesn't bite me, and I'm gonna try to get on this little wave, and I'm gonna try to ride it back to shore, and, you know, impress my wife and kids. And it never happened, you know. But now it's like I can sit there with my boys and say, you know, look, these waves came from New Zealand. You know, I love that. You know, that like makes me emotional. I love New Zealand. We spent 6 months there road tripping around. That's
North or
like a
South Island.
connection. Both. Yeah, we did both. 3 months on each. And it's like, I love that. It just like I said, it just kind of brings it together. And it's like, man, we're all part of this beautiful world. And it's like, you have this storm going on over here, and it's bringing these waves that I can enjoy in San Diego. That's just beautiful. I just love that.
Well, and the deeper you learn about things, like I know I have friends on the Big Island of Hawaii, and they'll text me like waves are pumping. I know 3 days later we're gonna get waves.
Wow, that's
Like
wild.
it,
That's
it's
cool.
it takes that long for the
That's
swell to,
cool.
you know,
Yeah,
go just from Hawaii to California, you
that's
know. So
crazy. Yeah.
um it's, you know, coming from, again, kind of like small town Midwest, everybody's pretty friendly, very homogenous. I mean, most people were either farmers or working in a factory somewhere. Not much culture per se. I mean, there is, like, there's hunting and all that kind of good stuff, you know,
We
which is
loved
his own.
we stayed in Green Bay. My little
Okay.
boy, my 12-year-old's a fanatic a football fan, which I'm not, you know, so it's
Yeah.
kind of funny that he is, but we went to Lambeau Field and played there and hung out, and you know,
Yeah.
it was beautiful. You know, we loved it, but I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. You know, it's a small town. It's just
Cause
different,
like,
you
cause
know.
yeah, it's, and I'm talking specifically like my town of just like, it
Yeah.
is so small. I mean, there was
Yeah.
3,000 people in the whole town.
Yeah.
You know, I knew
Yeah, there's
everybody's
it's
first and last name in the entire high
yeah.
school, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
like for me,
Not a real deep gene pool there, right? I'm from
no.
the same
And
I'm from a town called Parowan, and it's a little bit bigger, but Paraguna, it's up the road, and it's like 2,000 people, and everybody says our family tree doesn't fork, you know. So
yeah,
I'm with you. Hey guys, I wanted to just step away from this conversation real quick and talk about a few things that we have going on here at M42 Adventures. One of the things that I'm most excited about is we actually landed our first couple sponsors. Big deal for a new startup like this, a huge deal, and it's even a bigger deal for the sponsors that we got. Origin USA, Pete Roberts, just a heck of a guy. I met him up in Maine at his headquarters 3 or 4 years ago, and just a solid human. And I'm so excited that they're on board and they're actually our first sponsor. And then right behind them, Montana Knife Company came in. Josh Smith, the founder of that. And just good people, good companies, American made, bringing jobs back to America, and just true patriots. And so I could not be more excited to have our first sponsors, and 2, have them be such large, meaningful, good companies. And I'm just so excited. So I wanted to jump out with that. Second, I wanted to talk about some of the events we've had. We just got back from Hawaii with a group of individuals, 2 groups of individuals hunting out there for a couple weeks with our bows for axis deer. Absolutely amazing time. I do it every year, and I was excited to finally launch it as an M42 event, and a complete success. So that was amazing. Had built some new relationships, and just an absolute wonderful time. Also, we're heading to Alaska next week. So I head to Alaska next week with 8 other individuals that we're going to take up there and let them experience Alaska for the first time. So if you've ever wanted to get out and do that, stay tuned. We're going to have more Alaska adventures planned and experiences. And then just to update everybody, the New Harmony events, the events here, the retreats that we're hosting ourselves at this 50-acre ranch here in Utah are both sold out for this fall. Excited for that. Can't wait. And I want to appreciate everybody who supported us and is going to join us for that. So, and then again, Africa. We've got Africa coming up in 4 weeks. I just bought my flights, taking my wife and 3 kids. We've got about 20 spots sold. There is still a few spots. April 5th to the 11th with Ryan Mickler. He's the headliner. And then April 11th to the 17th I'm going to be the headliner for that. So we're going to have a great time. Helicopter rides, hunting, photo safari, humanitarian projects, going to orphanages, and Origin is actually, that's one of their main sponsorships is that hunt. So want to thank them again for jumping on board and supporting us. Number 4 is our store. I wanted to go over that. We got hats, apparel, all different things. If you want to get some gear, love the support. We're starting to get orders, and we appreciate all that. And you can go on there and order on our website. Again, subscribe, follow, listen, and continue to support us. We truly appreciate it. We got some amazing guests lined up, as you can hear right now in this episode, and we're going to continue to line up amazing guests. So continue to follow along, and we appreciate it, and we will return to this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
And so I wonder, because again, I was an outcast in the sense of grew up on a lake. I didn't hunt, I didn't really fish, I wakeboarded, I skied, I I did all of these other things. One of a handful of people of divorced parents, those kind of things. Where I wanted to just leave. I just wanted to leave my hometown. I wanted to get out. I wanted to do anything. I wanted to go see the world. And there was a lot of we'll call it motivational anger of, to prove to, I can still, I can still think of this. I won't say his name out of just pure, kindness. But this kid who made fun of me in middle school for a pair of Tommy Hilfiger shorts that I wore, and I mispronounced a word while reading in front of class, and they made the pun and all that, and I just remember going back, probably 8-10 years ago now, getting success in real estate business that I run, and just seeing him bald, fat, 2 kids, still in the hometown, still drinking in the local bar. And that
hasn't seen anything.
Nothing made me happier than just you kid.
Absolutely.
I've done
a lot of
so
that.
much. Yeah.
And I love that, I'm the same way for me. People kind of ask, why I did live the way I lived. And a lot of it, when it comes down to it, honesty is people tell me I can't do it. It's you can't retire at 36. You can't travel with kids. You can't. And I'm like, okay, maybe you can't, but I can, and I'm going to show you. And then you go out there and you come back and it's what are you doing? It's I still work at this, automotive shop. And it's what have you done? It's
and kind of dig into that a little bit, because I know Ricky said we would talk about finances a little bit, kind of business and such. I'm 36 right now, so inspirational to hear that you retired, and like I'm in a
Hmm.
business where it seems like a hedonic treadmill of as soon as you close a transaction, you're unemployed and you got to go find a new client. Um, where oh,
It took me
there's
2 years to figure out how to retire. It took me.
yeah,
I got a mentor. I had a mentor of my own, and I went to him and told him my plans. I went to my dad first and said, "Hey, I want to retire and travel the world," and he laughed.
probably the wrong
You know,
generation, and yeah, the
yeah,
wrong
he's like,
mindset. Yeah.
you're in construction. You've got 40, 50 employees. You can't leave. And I'm like,
But that's before podcasts. That's before
and
like,
that's it.
all these
Yeah.
people who have like shown you here are the steps on how to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting that like still to this day, to the point that I forgot and I just remembered,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
there is a distinct mindset, comfort level of risk between a W-2 employee and a self-employed person, small
Mm-hmm.
business owner or whatever you're doing. Like, and the world needs both. We need the people pushing
Mm-hmm.
the envelope, starting the businesses, failing, doing all the things right. And someone who's going to just, you know what, I'm showing up to my 9 to 5 job. I got my health insurance. I got my money. Like there's definitely days where I envy those people who can just clock in, clock out, be happy with
Me
their
too.
weekend, and like it just, get a little like itch
Yeah.
of like, I can't,
Yeah.
can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like there's just a mindset difference, and like for someone's listening to this and like you're never satisfied. I mean, every sporting accomplishment that I've ever accomplished, every degree, every award, every big transaction I've ever closed, the the feeling of joy after that accomplishment gets less and less as I get older,
Mm-hmm.
and the feeling of needing more, needing to do it again, needing to do it at a higher level, um, you know, keeps changing, keeps growing. And so like if you're sitting there and you have those same feelings, like it's like taking the veil out of like every single day I wake up unemployed and I got a to-do list,
Mm-hmm.
but like, and I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. And, in the grand scheme of real estate agents, I am successful. Um, but that like insecurity, that unknown of what's next, how do I grow, how to be more efficient? Like, I just got married, we're trying to have kids, like I want to have a family, like what does it look like when I have kids in my life and what is my business going to look like? None of those insecurities ever go away. But if you don't go for it, you'll forever regret it. And, kind of just taking like my own personal story of every place I've lived after college, I've never been to. I never knew a single person. I didn't have I had either a job or some sort of connection to it somehow lined up, but very loosely. And I had no idea what I was doing and I didn't know what I was going to do. But, that younger, naive confidence of like, well, I've never failed yet. Like, and the failures that I have had, I'm still alive. I like to joke to
Mm-hmm.
my wife, I'm statistically invincible, nothing has
Mm-hmm.
killed me
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like take the first step because, think of it as your life is the foggy day. You can only see as far as you're able to, but if you take 10 steps, you can see 10 steps further ahead. And it's only in hindsight does our story make sense? Do the non sequitur dots on the grass that can you pull back 30,000 feet? And there is the trend line of all those data points that nothing makes sense while you're in it. A quick story that I've been telling a lot of clients, because of like higher interest rates, low inventory, demand is high, bluntly, it is expensive to own a home anywhere in America, but coastal San Diego, it's skyrocketing in prices. Is that an 80-year-old gentleman walked up behind me and my wife while we were drawing in the sand the outline of the house, and we're going to put our couch there, TV there. And he comes up and he's like, "Hey kids, what are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we just bought a house. Like this is, we're so excited. Like, we're about to move in, man. It's a big decision." Like, and he goes, in 1976 or 77, something like that. He's like, "I bought a house for $100,000. Interest rates were around 13%. I got an 11% interest rate. I don't know how I got that. I had a wife, 2 kids that stayed, and my wife stayed at home, 2 kids, and I had no idea how I was going to pay the mortgage every single month. He's like, my house is on 3rd and D. Now, for people who don't know Encinitas geography, that's 3 blocks from the ocean. His house, I don't even need to see it. I don't need to know the square footage. I don't need to know
Yeah.
anything. It's worth
Yeah.
at least $5 million. At least $5 million,
Wow.
right? He
Wow.
bought it for $100,000 in 1976. The
Right.
average price point in 1976 was probably like $48,000.
Right.
So,
Right.
he bought a house that was twice as expensive as everybody else. He was
Yeah.
doing
It's
well
a
for
nice
himself.
house. Yeah. It's a nice
Nice
house.
house, very nice house. But like the thought that like a guy in 1976 who now I look back and he owns a $5+ million home, he bought it for $100,000. It's been paid off for at least 30 years. He was unsure of what was going on. So if you think whatever's going on in your life right now is too unsurmountable, someone had a similar situation to you that like is just 10 years ahead of you, just 30 years ahead of you. And like they didn't know what they were doing, but like the successful people are the ones who are continuing to take that next step forward and just figuring it out as you go.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And that's one thing with travel. I talked to my dad about this a lot. When you're, like I said, when you're in Utah, you're in Southern Utah, you go around to everybody and they're stressed about their car payment, raising their kids, everything that we all worry about. And then you fly over to Italy and you're in, Positano hanging out on the beach and you're talking to some guy and you're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, I'm a cabinet maker, and I'm like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And pretty good, but it's a little slow right now, and I'm having a hard time getting wood, and my rent went up on my building, and I'm like, wow, everybody on earth, everywhere I've ever gone, there's a little food truck in New Zealand, and they're trying to sell,
Mm-hmm.
tacos, and they're like, we're stressed out because, they're not letting us park here, and they're wanting us to move across the street, and I'm like you're saying, that's why I respect and am drawn to entrepreneurs, because that's all I've ever done. And like you said, you need both, and I appreciate that. I have lots of employees that I depend on for me, to help me and build my dream. But at the same time, and Ricky can vouch for this, I have meetings with all my employees every single month, every one of them. And I say, what are your dreams? What are your hopes? Like, I'm beyond the fact of, hey, I need you to stay in your spot running my CNC machine, but
Yeah.
my life's going to be bad. It's like, listen, I care about you and I want you to, grow and do better because you've given me a couple years of your life helping me build my dream. What do you want? And trying to help people. That's kind of my next chapter. And, M42 is one chapter of it where we're trying to get people outside and experience these new things. And we're going to do a surfing one in Costa Rica. I'll let you know when that is. If you could come down and make it, I'd love that. Maybe have you as a
Yeah.
headliner. But we're going to do that for sure. We've got other ones going, mountain biking ones and whatever. But another aspect of what I'm going to start building here soon is trying to help people, just better their lives, through businesses mostly. But I love what you're saying. I think it's exactly right. You know, I also envy those people at a lot of times when I lost everything in the recession. I mean, I was $500,000 in debt and lost everything. I wasn't even, I was in a deep, deep cavern, cavernous hole. And I envied those people that had the 9 to 5 and the steady paycheck. I had a buddy that worked at the city and he didn't even know we were in a recession. I'm like, dude, the world's ended. And he's like, what? And, but, there's ebbs and flows, there's peaks and valleys. And obviously our valleys can go much higher than the 9 to 5 guy. We can kind of create
Mm-hmm.
that, that spike on the chart that you're talking about. So yeah, man, I love your story. You're like my people. I love people who, I love that you just got married. That's the best thing that you're ever going to do. I promise you that. You can, family and kids is my world. I
Yeah.
wouldn't trade that for anything. And then all the adventures you're going to have, when you have that little baby, boy or girl. I've got 3 boys. My wife's actually pregnant with our fourth right now. So,
Congrats. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're
Do you know
excited.
if it's a boy?
She wants to wait, she's 40.
Okay.
I'm 44, and I keep teasing her, that it's like this geriatric pregnancy, and I'm trying to get a hold of Guinness World Record, because in Utah, if you don't, it's like
Ah,
in Utah, it's
well,
so
Utah
funny
with the
because,
Mormons, you're like
dude,
22
yeah,
and you like got at least
yeah,
3 kids. Yeah, I get
yeah,
it.
yeah, dude, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Like everybody we tell, we're like, yeah, we're having a baby, and they're like, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm 44. She's 40, gonna be 41.
Don't you have grandchildren?
Yeah, yeah. And they're like, dude, we just got everybody out of the house. You don't, and
Yeah.
I'm like, you're the weird ones. I promise, you're the weird ones. Just because I'm outnumbered right now doesn't make you right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, man, you're on. I love what you're doing. Like I said, that's when you have that little baby and it's a little spitting image of you, there is nothing that compares to that. That's my purpose and what I love. So, man, it's just been great to talk to you. I would like to get more into the financial. Maybe we can have you on in another few months and go into more of the financial side of it.
Yeah.
I think, you have to live the life you've lived. People want to live the life you've lived. They want to have the experiences you've had. One, they think you have to have money, and I think you can show that you don't necessarily. I'm sure when you went to Thailand, you wasn't a millionaire. When you went to, when you ended up in St. Thomas, you wasn't a millionaire. So I think that's a good conversation to let people know, you don't have to always have money, right?
Okay, so this goes for anything in life. You either have time or you have money. You have your youth or you have experience. And so it's understanding that unfortunately the timeline only goes forward for now.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's understanding where you are and like even at an ethereal level, because like I'm again 36 and I think at 30 years old I finally figured out how my brain was working. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
I should
yeah,
probably, like I feel better when I work out consistently. Wow, I should
yeah,
probably just keep working out consistently.
yeah,
Things like
yeah,
that. I'm like, I get
yeah.
angry when
I
I'm
want to be.
hungry.
I
I
want to be
should probably,
married.
yeah,
Because you've
I
only
should
been married how
probably
long?
not.
2 years?
No, 9 months, 10 months.
Oh wow, I love it, dude.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not
Got to
long
work
at
on
all.
Rens. Got to work on Rens, man.
Yeah, but
He's,
like
he, yeah.
it's it's knowing that the quadrants of like time, money, youth, or experience, and it just intuitively understanding like where you are on that spectrum. And a lot of times you
Mm,
don't understand that until you're probably middle age. But like
mm-hmm.
if you have kids and you're raising kids, obviously don't have any right now, but like the unique life that I've lived is exposure to options,
Mm,
understanding that there is more than just one way of life. And, for me, it was just sheer determinism that I was not going to end up like my father. I was not going to stay in my hometown. I was, and that was like anger, spite, childish, whatever, adolescence.
mm-hmm.
But like, the redo button of like having a miniature me of like, I want to make sure that like, no, you'll never get spoiled. You'll never know how much money we have, but we'll still go on vacation. We'll still do the things. Like, I
I
want you to
love
have
it.
a hard life in certain
Yeah,
aspects and manners.
absolutely, absolutely.
Because you need to grow character and you need to know that like when you push through hard things, good things are on the other side. And that is the
100%.
only way you will be successful is if you can suck it up, buttercup, put your head down, get some sweat on your brow and move some shit. Um,
Absolutely.
but
And
like the
gratitude.
more,
I think a lot
yeah,
of people don't. And I have lots of friends who have, millions of dollars and they give their kids everything. And then they say, yeah, my kids, they're not appreciative. And I'm
well,
like,
they
because
didn't earn it.
you've given them everything. You know, give
Yeah,
your kid a bike and make your kid buy a bike and watch how they treat it.
yeah,
It's pretty simple. If you give it to them, they're going to leave it outside and it's going to get rained on and in the sun. But if they
yeah.
work pulling weeds and make that $100 and buy that bike is going to be in the
Hmm.
garage. And that's basics.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah.
And so just kind of like having options for your kid. If you are a kid or a younger, like you have the internet now, it's ubiquitous. Like there are people doing crazy things all over the place. Find somebody who seems to be honest and have a healthy, balanced life, which could, again, be careful on the internet because most people are lying and only giving you the sunshine and rainbows.
100%.
Think of like Michael Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
that greatest basketball player of all time, debatable nowadays, but whatever, greatest ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, cheated on his wife, like, his whole personal life collapsed, but like
Mm-hmm.
very wealthy, very successful, all that kind of good stuff. So it's like greatness or, being on any end of the spectrum is rarely ever good. Being in the, upper three quarters or, whatever percentile of it is probably where you're going to have the most health and success and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So keep your options open, keep moving forward, and know that, like, if you don't have the answers, someone out there has done something similar to you and can give you some sort of advice, but make sure they're not too far ahead of you. It's like the gurus are like, with the 3-hour morning routine. They're like, oh yeah, you had a
Yeah.
3-hour
Yeah.
morning routine when you were starting your construction business?
All right.
No. You were doing the
Mhm.
electrical, you were doing the framing, you were running around bidding out jobs, and you were making sure that, no one was messing up the job, and you circled it back, and you were accountable for every single step of the way. And it wasn't until X, Y, and Z were you able to step back. So it's like, if you are looking for that mentor, this is a business coach told me this one, was that, like, you need to create a C-suite for your own life. They don't have to be paid. They don't have to be, it's like, who's really good at finances in your life? Well, you talk to finances about that. Who's got a really amazing marriage? Talk to them about marriage. Who's really fit and healthy? Talk to them about that, and like find your own personal board of directors of people you can surround yourself with and that are mentors, that are, equals on one hand, but, experts on another, and be able to bounce ideas off of them. And that will, you become the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. All those things and phrases that I'm, spitting out right now that I didn't invent any of them. But
Yeah,
it's like,
I love it.
keep moving, keeps, finding people that are 5 steps ahead of you because they can see 5 steps further than you can. And only in hindsight will it make sense.
Absolutely, man. I 100% agree. I think, I actually like the way you said that because when I was talking to Rands again about this podcast and kind of, getting ready to launch it, and I says, I want some of the big names, some of these big players in, in the self-help industry and stuff. It'd be good to have them on, but I'm like, I also want people that you're saying that are in the, they're not the average guy just going 9 to 5 clocking in. They've got some success, but it's relatable. I think a lot of our mentors these days, the people that we idolize, yeah, it's like David Goggins. David Goggins always comes to mind, and it's like the guy gets up and runs a marathon every day. That's just I understand you can do that. I understand he's a human. He puts his
human
pants on
body is physical of doing it. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I have a buddy who's getting divorced right now. He actually got divorced about a year ago because he went to the gym too much. He's the most fit guy that I know. He's, looks amazing, but he would go to the gym 4 hours a day. And he's got 2 little kids at home. And his wife was like, hey, you're not being a dad. And he's like obsessed with his fitness.
Yeah.
And she's leaving him. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go to that guy as a coach because, yeah, he may be able to get me a 6-pack.
But
I don't want those values. I want the guy who is able to balance his money, and that's one thing. When I retired at 36, I had a lot of friends saying, what are you doing? Why are you quitting? Why are you retiring? There's so much more money to make. And I'm like, I'm set. I have enough.
Can I
rephrase
that? Can I rephrase that real quick?
Yeah,
because,
for sure, yeah.
Again, like my thing that pissed me off so bad was when I graduated college and I left for Thailand, became a scuba instructor. The phrasing of like, oh, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to, fill in the blank, right? And like,
get married.
It's just like it's like, what do you mean? Like, just because I'm living in the Caribbean, like again, it was going back to, you had a horrible 2008 where you're $500,000 in the hole. I was living in the Caribbean, sailing $1 million boats. Yeah. And like, I would sail by, the literal $20 million, $100 million yacht with like literal, Victoria's Secret models on it, like in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. I didn't experience a recession. I had, like you said, I had no money. I was living paycheck to paycheck, but like in a sense, like my rent was tiny and like, and I was like, I was living a really good life and I was getting really good life experiences. And like this idea of like, I get it on like, so you can talk to a regular person, not to belittle that, but like, I retired
Mm-hmm.
at 36. It's like, no, you didn't. You met a financial goal so that you
Mm-hmm.
can, live your life the way you want to live your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
You've
Yeah.
engineered your lifestyle to be at a point where, yes, you did X, Y, and Z to get up to a point where you were able to meet a financial goal to then
Yep.
shift the goalpost into something that is more fulfilling. Because, I mean,
Family and travel. Absolutely.
you
100%.
look at the people who are super, super wealthy and are going after the next deal, are going after the
Mm-hmm.
next thing. Like most of those people, therapy talk here, still have a
Mm-hmm.
freaking like hole in their system. They're still like,
Absolutely.
they're still trying to
Unhappy.
get their father's love, their mother's love, their attention, whatever. And like they're trying to fill that hole with
Mm-hmm.
money and achievements. And like they realize that $30 million deal that they did last week, it feels like nothing. It does not feel good
Absolutely.
at all. And so it's like it's understanding that it's like it's not when are you going to get a real job, or I retired when I'm at 36. It's like I've curated my lifestyle to prioritize the most important things in my life,
Yeah, I love
and
that.
as of right now it's this. And you
Yeah.
never know, you might
Oh yeah.
start another construction company because guess
Well,
what, you
I'm
have
back
the blueprint,
starting
you did it.
M42. I'm back here doing this because it's like
Yeah,
I've traveled and I'm done traveling for now, and now I'm trying to find that next
for
chapter, and
now.
it's like
Yeah.
absolutely 100%. I think that's yeah,
Do you listen to
that's a
any of
very well.
Mike Rose Dirty Jobs
I follow
interviews?
him. I follow him. I haven't listened to him, but I love his posts. The dude is
The
so thought
story
out.
about the guy who had a septic tank pumping company where you come up, drain the septic tank, and dump it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He built it up over 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, sold it to some big company, and they're like, "What are you going to do next now that you've done that, you have all the money in the world?" And he goes, "Well, I know how to do that." So he went and started another septic pumping company in a different town, in a different market. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
like because he was good at it, he had a skill and he knew how to replicate it. Like, and it's like because the job isn't the fulfillment, it's the process, it's the
The
journey, it's
building.
the other
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like if you're motivated to build businesses, like
Mm-hmm.
keep building businesses. If you're
Mm-hmm.
motivated to do whatever, like go do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like know that like
And
you
and think
know
about it. I think a lot of people that I talk to, they just don't stop to think. They're just kind of like, I'm trying to make my house payment. I'm trying to pay for my kids, and I'm like, you have to do that. That's great that you're doing that today. And I always use it the comparison of working in your business or on your business.
mhm,
It's like you're working in your life. In your life is paying the bills, feeding your family, but on your life is what do you want? Where are you going?
yeah,
Are you going to, as an analogy, are you going to Denver? Are you going to San Diego? Do you need flip flops or do you need a hoodie? It's like, you know, and then once you get them
yeah,
talking and they're like, oh, I might like this, I might like that. And I think that's what most people need to do is just stop and think, do I like what I'm doing? And if not, try to pivot and get into something like you said. And it doesn't have to be money. I think everybody thinks that money's just going to solve all your
yeah.
problems, and I did, and I was like, man, if I can
No,
make money,
it's an amplifier.
I win the game, and it gives you opportunities, but
Mhm.
I'm not, 50 times more happier than I was when I had 50 times less money, and so I think
No,
that's a big lesson for people to understand. And I think finding
look
these
at the
things like surfing or travel or building businesses, I have one guy who, like you said, he's my mentor and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, self-made, came here as an immigrant from Canada, no parents, an orphan, and worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he keeps doing it. And I'm like, Bill, why do you keep doing it? And he's like, I love the game. He's like, it's not the money, it's helping people, changing lives, building something. And that's, who am I to judge that? That's his surfing, that's his travel.
But it's like, what do you expect? Do you think like someone's all of a sudden going to change their personality, their motivation, and their drive because like some sort of arbitrary dollar amount? Like
Right,
they
right.
got to be where they are because of their characteristics. They're not
Mm-hmm.
where they are because of something else, and now all of a sudden it's going to change. Like a
Yeah.
motivated person who has that risk tolerance and then like has built the skills around them is the one who's going to be successful. And it's just like it's your personality. It's a trait that you kind of have to harness, in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And it's
It's a work in
rarely something
progress
that's,
too.
yeah, and it's rarely something that you just like that's, I think,
Yeah.
another Mike Rowe thing, that like people fall into the trap of you can do whatever you want, dream to do whatever, and it's like, no, what are you good at? What is the
Yeah.
intersection of what are you good at? What is something you
Mm-hmm.
can do consistently, and what makes money?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I love surfing. I do it very
Right.
consistently, but I'm not that
It's
good
hard to
in
monetize.
comparison, and
It's
I
hard to
can't make any money
monetize.
off of it. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
as you can tell, as you've tried to probably end this podcast three times now, and I'm extremely
No,
extroverted and
no,
extremely talkative,
no. I love it. I
um,
love it.
that like, I'm an extrovert, and
Mm.
I'm a reluctant salesperson, but I care for people greatly, and I want to make sure that I leave people better off than how I found them, and I fell into real estate on accident, because my mom bought a multifamily property in Pacific Beach while I was selling roofing supplies, and inland, and it was hot as heck, and I hated it, and I was barely making any money. I was making as much money as I was in the Caribbean, hating my life.
Mm.
And
How long
the
goes
my
this?
uh that would have been 2013 or 2014 is when my mom bought that building. So I
So
moved
about a
here in
decade you've
2011.
been doing real estate.
Yeah, I moved here. Yeah, I moved here in 2013. My mom bought the property in 2014, and I got my license in 2015.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, kind of going back to, I know if we do another podcast talk about finances and engineering your life and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but like, again, my
Yeah.
mom, single mom, raised 4 kids in my grandparents' basements, never really made good money, but made good real estate purchases and was able to leverage them. And
I love that.
um, and
It shows
she
people that it's
sold.
doable. Everybody thinks
Yeah,
to buy a property you have to have millions of dollars, and it's like, no, you start small. You can start with a double wide trailer,
but
and
let me ask you a question. What was the time frame between your first and second investment property purchases?
so I started with land. I started buying lots. And then I was actually with my wife in Palm Springs, and we were at her uncle's. I was still just pretty broke. I bought 2 lots for 28 grand each here in St. George, and building lots. And I was in Palm Springs, and we went to stay with her uncle, and I was sitting in his house one morning, and he had a stack of checks on the counter. And I says, "Hey, Uncle Grant, what are those?" And he says, "Oh, it's the first of the month, you know." And I says, "What do you do?" And he says, "I have almost 100 rental properties here in Palm Springs and in LA."
Yeah.
And I'm like, 100? 100? And he's like, "Yeah, I have 104 or something it was, or 94 maybe." And I'm like, "Holy cow, can we talk?" And so I found that mentor, and I says, "Hey, this is my story." And he says, "Get rid of the land." And he says, "Land, you're just waiting for it to appreciate." He says, "Go buy something with a unit on it. Twoplex, fourplex is better if you can." I couldn't afford it. So anyway, I sold those, and I ended up buying my first condo. And it took me like, I think it was from number one to number two, it was like 3 years. And then 3 to 4, within 7, I'd bought 8. But I tell everybody, the first year was so hard. It took me 5 years to buy it, and then another 3 to get number 2. And then I bought 3 and 4, the next year, and then 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the last 2 I paid cash for.
But see, that like, for different people, the time frame is going to be stretched out or shortened. But like, that is a perfect example of 99% of people's story out there of
Mm,
like, it took a long period of time to get to the first one. Once you've cracked the first one, you start getting into different options, unique financial situation,
know what to look
financing
for.
options. You know what to look for. You gain that experience. You've taken that next 5 steps, right? So long period to get the first one, a good amount of time to get to the second one, and then typically the time period starts shrinking for
Mm-hmm.
the subsequent purchases till you get to
Yeah.
a point where then you have enough, or you have a good portfolio. So now you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for specific things of like, all right, if I own 8 condos, can I sell this entire portfolio of 8 condos and buy a 50 unit building
Mm.
somewhere? with a
Mm-hmm.
higher ROI, with less maintenance and less driving around to different properties, and that when
And
you
that's what
go
I did.
from,
That's what I did.
yeah. And that is like the classic
That's
trajectory
funny.
of,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
moving, it's
Investment.
starting where you are, like house hacking, buy a duplex, live in one, rent out the other,
Mm-hmm.
move out of
Mm-hmm.
both of them. It's now making you money. So it's profiting X. You can then take that and buy the next thing. It lowers your income on that. So you then live in that one. Then you either sell it and move into, and so you ladder, leapfrog, and utilize, what you've learned, the assets that you've grown, home equity lines of credit, like all kinds of different things where you can start leveraging properties that you already own in order to buy the next one. So that
Mm-hmm.
the greatest thing about real estate is the ability to leverage the bank's money
Mm.
for your benefit in the long run. Um, talking specifically real estate, it takes in Southern California and San Diego about 7 years from when you purchase it to when rent will outpace your mortgage,
Mm. Okay.
right? If you look
Mm-hmm.
at also the average, the first 7 years that you're paying your mortgage, you're paying pretty much only interest.
Mm-hmm.
Only after
Mm-hmm.
about 7 years does your principal start actually getting chunked away from your actual monthly mortgage payment. So that's where
Okay.
it kind of like starts to make sense. And usually, if you look at economic cycles, that's usually every 10 years is where we see like interest rates changing significantly. We'll call it, from, 1 to 3% price change in the interest rates, minus COVID, minus the Cold War, where you have spikes on either direction. If you
Yeah.
level it all out, there's cycles.
Right.
Um, and, to go down a nice conspiracy rabbit hole of, you know, once you realize that money is a man-made invention, the stock market is a man-made invention, the economy is a man-made invention, and that, publicly traded companies have to make quarterly earnings for the stocks to continue to rise so that the stock market works, so that the money can continue to be lended out. So once you realize that this entire thing of an economy is a human creation, there's rules, there's regulations, and you can gamify it. And so it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter how much money you have. If you play the game like a wealthy person, you will gather wealth. If you
Mm-hmm.
play the game like a poor person, you will maintain or lose money,
Mm-hmm.
and telling people, something as simple as $5, $10, whatever you can put into a Charles Schwab account, and you buy an index fund of the S&P 500, which is the 500 best companies in the world. If the company number 500 loses money, it dropped out, number 499 bumps up. Guess what?
Mm-hmm.
You're following the market. The market
Mm-hmm.
grows at about 8%, a year,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
doubles every 8 years. So whatever money that you put into it will double 8 years later. Then you have compounding interest, so it's like, doesn't matter. So if like, it doesn't matter what you start with. Like every
Yeah.
financial advisor in the world will tell you, the younger you start, the more compounding interest and the more effect that you will have, no matter what that little dollar amount is. If you wait 10 years later, you have to start with larger amounts, put larger amounts in there to be able to keep up with what someone who just started 10 years before you.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's start young, start small, be consistent, don't look at it. My
And like you
financial
said,
advisor.
it's start. That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. I hear people all the time are like, I'm waiting, I'm doing this, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. I'm like, start. It's just like you
Yeah.
say, like, you know, anything you do in life, climbing Mount Everest, it starts with a step, right? We've all heard that,
Yeah.
So it's like just get into the game. And I hear so many people thinking, I've got to save up 100 grand or 50 grand or 20 grand. And it's like, no, you don't. You can start today, like you're saying, with a smaller dollar amount.
But what most people don't understand is, and this is what I don't like about coaches, gurus, and stuff that you see on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
is because if you don't have the money to hire them, they're never going to give you all the goods. Because what are
Mm-hmm.
they got? What do they have to sell of their course, their coaching, their whatever? So
Mm-hmm.
they're only going to tell you like the highlight reel of like, it's so easy. Like I follow way too many mortgage brokers and real estate agents, and like the clickbaity misinformation stuff that's out there on the internet of like, it's so easy. You just do this, this, and this. And it's like, yeah, but you're leaving out the fact that, like, again, comparing it to Southern California, you're in Columbus, Ohio, where the average purchase price is this and that. And like, you don't say that the house that you bought was $150,000 and that, yeah,
Right.
putting 20% down is a lot more achievable than like, someone in San Diego listening to your advice. So it's like a lot of times people, you get overwhelmed by the options, the potential, and not knowing what to do. And so trying to give advice that is easily achievable and practical with like, here's the next 3 steps that you take. So it's like the S&P 500, Charles Schwab, I don't care if it's $5, $20, put something in every single month, put it on auto pay so you forget about it and just let it ride, Then it's like, okay, cool. Put your money in an online savings account because most online savings accounts have a 4 to 4.5% interest on the money that's in the bank account. You go to your credit union, the big major banks in your town, their high yield savings accounts will have like 1.3, 1.3 quarters, interest on that money. So it's like, if you need liquid, accessible cash, put it in a high yield savings account where you're earning 4% on it. Yeah, it's half the stock market, but it's 100% guaranteed and it's accessible at any point in time. So if you accrue a certain amount of money and you have it in a high yield savings account, it's going to earn interest. And, the tip of that I tell people for buying their first home is go on Zillow. You're doing it already. Find the house that you like, that you want to buy. Scroll down. What does it say that, the monthly payment will be? Okay, cool. Let's use $5,000. What's your rent? $3,000? Okay, so there's a $2,000 difference. Take that $2,000 every time you get a paycheck, every time you do whatever, you put that in that high yield savings account before you do anything, right? Forced saving with an interest on it. You do that for 3 to 6 months. You will know if that monthly payment is achievable, comfortable. Can you still go out to dinner? Can you like live your life? Can you still operate as a human being or not? If you can't, guess what? You put it in a bank account that you have access to. Use the money. Do what you got to do. But
find a house for 4,000 because now you know that 4,000's I like that.
But what you're doing too is 6 months
you're testing
of
it
saving
before you jump in.
That's $12,000. Most people there. I don't know where the stigma comes from, or the you have to put 20% down to buy a house is, but you can put as little as 3.5% down if you're military, or if you're in USDA land, it's 0% down. So as little as 3.5% down to purchase a home. $12,000 is gonna be probably 3.5% of a house that you may entertain out there. So it's that like, this is the one thing that like scuba diving and coaching kids has like kind of helped distill down in my mind is that like, if you can't explain it to a 12-year-old and they can then repeat it back to somebody, you don't know it well enough, and you're using big fancy words to show that you're an expert.
I
had a real estate boss. I started under his firm, and he was an NLP practitioner. Have you heard of NLP? Neuro linguistic patterning. Tony Robbins is the biggest proponent. Most people know who Tony Robbins is.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
And NLP it started off as a quackpot doctor who was trying to cure his patients of diseases by rewiring their brain through, phrasing and stuff like that. This person who was Tony Robbins' mentor found out about it and was like, hey, I can use that for business, and I can, there's like if you get someone to say yes 7 times, they're easier to say yes to. Exactly. So it's like you say, do you like that shirt that you're wearing? And then, you start something really low, you say yes. And then you work your way up to something bigger. So then it's like, are you willing to hire me? Is like the 7th question, and it's like, your brain doesn't allow you to, for confirmation bias reasons, to say no, because you've agreed and you found value and you said yes all the way up to this final question. And so NLP can be used to manipulate people if you're a bad person.
Yeah,
Because you
right.
know the way that our psychology works, you understand the way that like, language works, and like getting someone trapped in a double bind. And like, I hated that. I hated that
Yeah,
you're like
yeah,
manipulating people into ways to getting a sale, and like, people can use it for good, people can use it for bad, but like, um, it's usually jargon and large words and complicated scenarios created to show that you need me.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's like,
I'm smarter than you.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
the Sherpa who's going to take you to the mountaintop. Where it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
if
It's
you
like just grab
find
my
me,
hand and take me up the mountain. We don't
yeah,
have to sit here and use big words.
yeah. And so it's
Yeah,
like, and that's where it's like, I want to distill it down to the easiest, most actionable step possible, so that like, again, it's hard to buy a house in San Diego, but like, this is what you do. And like, the younger you start, yeah, that's great. But like, wherever you're at in life, like, you're gonna have to concede on something to get that first home. I don't
yeah.
care who you are. If you're buying, I've had clients who, are looking at $5 million homes that like, they don't get everything that they want when they buy.
Wow.
No one needs a $5 million house. I don't care what market in the world you're in. No one needs a $5
Right.
million house. You want a
Yeah,
$5
for
million
sure.
dollar house.
For sure.
So, you need roof over your head. You don't need a
Food.
gold plated toilet, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so it's
yeah.
like, even if someone who's at this level is giving up something in order to get, a house, it's, it, you are too, and so it's like,
Yeah.
it's trying to figure out, kind of going back to how we started, is like, what lifestyle do you want to create? What are you like engineering to, like, if you like being in the mountains,
Hmm.
cool, let's go to this town, and this town to see, what it looks like. Can you afford
Hmm.
there? You want to be by the
Yeah.
beach? Let's go to these towns, and it's like trying to figure out like what restaurants, what neighborhoods, what activities, what like background do you want to be surrounded by? What religious, structures do you want to be close to? What community do you want to be in?
Hmm.
Whatever it is, like, this is how you construct your life. And like, you're going to
Hmm.
have to give this to get that, to make this, and to get the first one. And then kind of like your story, you buy the first one. A couple of years later, you get the second one. And then, shortly afterward, third, fourth, fifth,
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
holding on to this, moving that, and it's just like, you got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
because rents are never going to end. Sorry, rents are never going to not increase.
Right. Right.
Inflation
Yeah.
is never not going to happen.
All right.
And,
Yeah.
that person who bought the house in 1976, is sitting on a gold mine, because 30
They
years of
started.
not knowing how you're going to make the monthly payment, all of a sudden you don't have a monthly payment anymore. And how much easier is life going to get when the largest expense of your monthly life doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah. Absolutely.
How much more mental space are you going to have to go to the beach more often, go hunting on more hunting trips, go take your family to different? I mean, you're a living example of that. You were able to meet a minimum requirement so that you could then prioritize on X. And,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah. And
it
I don't have
wasn't
a
for
mortgage.
starting,
I don't have a. I don't have my property that I bought. I sold the condos and bought it, and so I don't have that mortgage. And that you're exactly right. I talk to so many people that's payments are $3,000 or $5,000 a month, and I'm like, I haven't had one for 10 years now, something like that,
yeah,
9 years. And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't even know what that would be like to have a house payment now or a car payment.
Well, and think about the built-in anxiety of what you have to do in
The
order
pressure.
to, yeah, you
Oh, I
know.
lived it. And I had a big house. I had a huge house, not a big house, but
Hmm.
a good size house and
Yeah.
a big truck and a motorcycle and all these different things. And I thought, like you said, I constructed my life to think that that was important and this mattered. Once I lost it, I was all smoke and mirrors and payments. They took it all away. And then it was like, okay, now what do I want? I want security. I want time and I want to travel. And I went and shifted, and now that's what I do. And so, yeah, I love that. I love that. You know, people listening, like you said, they need to, um, if that's their goals, like you said, if it's not, and they want to have whatever they want to construct their life like, but if they want to buy a house or they want to be able to travel and do some of these things, you got to
You
make
want to get
sacrifices.
outside. Yeah. And but it also, looking that 10 steps ahead and like, what feeling do you want to have?
Yeah.
Circling it back to surfing. And I said I was going to nerd out about shapes of surfboards a little bit, so I'll
Yeah.
get a little plug in there before
Hmm.
we move on. But,
Yeah.
like just like any other professional sport, 0.001% are the ones who are getting paid, you know?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the vast majority of us who are going out there and surfing are searching for a feeling, and like call surfer lingo is like the person having the most fun is the one surfing the best, bro. Like,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
but like, it's true though. It's the mindset of like, if you were having the most fun and you were catching a good amount of waves, like, and you were doing like, you're getting the feeling you want to get, like, you're winning, you're succeeding. Whether that's travel, whether that's hunting, whether that's whatever it is like you're going for a feeling that you're searching for. And in surfing, it's like, all right, if I have a big long board, like I'm gonna get, the glidey kind of dancing. You're walking up and down the board, and it's heavy, and the swing weight from its pivot point is super heavy, so it's hard to maneuver that board quickly. You shrink that board down and get, put more rocker, more curvature in it, so it can fit into that super fast curving wave, and it is more like a Ferrari or a race car where you can pivot and turn and maneuver much quicker, and you're going for that fast twitch, quick movement. You need this equipment for that. Kind of taking like sports and surfing and whatever and imposing it on life is like, you need to have a plan, you need to have a structure, you need to have the equipment, in order to get you that feeling that you're looking for. And if you don't know what that feeling is, you're going to keep hopefully achieving, but it's going to feel hollow, and it's not
Hmm.
going to, you're going to keep chasing the dragon, uh, and never feel good about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, my plan when I met with my mentor. And like I said, I was in the depths of, was a 10-year plan. It was a 10-year plan. And I didn't even know, you know, it was insurmountable at the time. And it took me 7 years. Um, but like you said, he made me write a plan, write a plan. And he says, get detailed, detailed, not, I want more money. How much money? I want to retire. When do you want to retire? How many rental
Yeah.
houses do you want? And I think that's like you said, that's key. If you don't do that, then you're just kind of showing up to the beach with a sheet of plywood and, gonna get wrecked, so.
But it's also expectation of like, I'm showing up with a sheet of plywood,
Yeah, yeah.
expecting that I'm going to do X, but like the plywood can only do Y. If
Mhm.
like, it's not like, you're not going to achieve your goal if you're showing up with
Can't
the
go in a
wrong
barrel
equipment
with
and
a
the
sheet
wrong
of
plan.
plywood. Yeah,
No, but
yeah,
like, I guarantee you there's a professional surfer out there doing something wild with a sheet of plywood, or some kid in like
right.
Africa,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
belly riding, like,
yeah,
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 but like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that's what he
So
wants to do. All right, brother. Well, I'm gonna
cut this off.
yeah, I think
I'll
we're
keep
good, man.
chatting
I
your
That
ear
was
off.
awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna shut this down. No,
Yeah.
I honestly, man, it's been great to talk to you, Greg. Um, how can people reach you? Do you? I know you got your
Yeah.
podcast, right? What do
So,
you? Well, how do people reach out?
the beautiful thing about being a real estate agent is, I have made it my job to be extremely easy to be found. So you can
Okay,
text me at my phone number, 858-361-5568. It's already out there in
okay,
the internet. Anybody can find it. Why not blast it even further?
yeah, yeah,
But I have a
yeah.
web, I got a website, I got social media. So, everything is either Greg or Gregory dot Kuchan. Um, and I work for Douglas Elliman. So yeah, just,
Okay,
I can email you all their handles and everything like that if you're going to put it in
yeah,
the show notes.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
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 Awesome, man. I appreciate the time. I'm actually gonna be in California, I think next week, so I'll hit you up and see if we can grab lunch or something.
You're going to be
We're
down
talking
in
about
San
coming down.
Diego?
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna come down. We're just planning it right now, but we're thinking we're gonna come down and take my boys to like SeaWorld or the zoo or Legoland. We don't know, but just
Cool.
something down there
How
and
old
go
are
to the
your kids
beach.
again?
3, 9, and 12.
Okay. 12's not going to have a great time at Legoland.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's,
Renz was
it's for
trying to
you.
get me to go there, and I'm like, Renz, Legoland? I'm like, is that even a
So
thing
there,
anymore?
I haven't
He's
been in a very long time, but like, it's skewed towards younger kids. It might have
Okay.
changed a
Okay.
little bit, but like it is
Yeah.
skewed towards younger kids.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I would definitely. I'm not a big fan of SeaWorld,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
they've done a
Changed a
lot
little
of better
bit.
things. Yeah, they've changed
Right.
them a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit and all that. But
Yeah.
like
They got some roller
San Diego,
coasters now.
and that's the thing is that like you know you don't have a killer whale trapped in a freaking fish tank anymore,
Right.
so you need to have
Right.
something. So I
Right.
would
Right.
highly recommend getting going to the zoo. If you haven't been to the San
Cool.
Diego Zoo,
Yeah, we have. We
um,
love it. We love
yeah,
it.
that's where
I
I
lived
would
in La
go.
Jolla. I started my first company in Tijuana.
Which
Actually, in Rosarito. I started my first company in Rosarito.
yeah,
And then that guy, I partnered with a guy, a Mexican down there, and he ended up running off with 40 grand of my money and disappearing.
common story.
And yeah, yeah. And then I started my second company in Tijuana, and I actually built it up to just over 300 employees,
Wow.
and was living in La Jolla. And that's when the crash happened, and I just
Okay.
it was just annihilated me. But yeah, we live there. We love it. We love San Diego. We go
Okay.
down
So you
all
know
the
about
time.
it then. Okay.
Yeah, we've done all the stuff. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'll hit you up and see if we can grab lunch or something and
So next
make
time
the
we
connection.
chat, let's less ADHD of like life, business, and like let's take. I would honestly like I'd love to ask you more questions of because like this is where you know someone who's listening and enjoying the content is like, well, wait, how did you retire at 36? Now you might have
Hmm.
talked about it a bunch
Yeah.
on your podcast, you know, but you know
Hmm.
it kind of
Yeah.
just that like breaking it down of like I did this for this long and this
Hmm.
is what sucked
Yep.
and then like this and that and it's kind of like a blueprint of you know what it actually took to get there
Yep.
in highlight reels of like and if you want more information reach out kind of thing like or you know you got
Yeah.
an ebook or go talk to that
Yep.
person you know they're a good coach on doing that but it's just like breaking it down to like you know what does building a business look like what does it look like to be consistent because like and all of that like I'd be down to talk a little bit more about financing and you know
Yeah.
and business and
Yeah.
building a business and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's so I've got another one in the works. So this one, like I said, is M42 Adventures. So it's going to be more surfing, mountain biking, just
Yeah.
fun stuff. But I have another one that I'm building right now called One Life. And it's a business company. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's going to be have a podcast. So I just haven't launched it yet, but yeah, it's going to be coming up here in the next few months.
All the things.
And I'd like to have you on there because that one's all financial and
Cool.
good stuff. So all right,
Yeah.
man. Well, nice to chat, Greg.
Good chat.
I appreciate
We'll
your
take-
time, man. Like you said, time's the most important thing we have.
We'll take
so.
you out surfing. We'll take your kids out surfing. Let's push them into some waves. I'll give you some tips.
I don't know. I'll come
we'll
watch
geek
you
out
surf.
about it.
I'll come watch and cheer you on.
No, trust me. We'll get you in a wave. We'll get you standing.
All right.
If I can
All
get,
right,
if
dude.
I've taken out kids with autism and special needs. I'm sorry, but if I can get a 6'2", 300-pound kid with autism
Yeah.
standing
All
on a
right.
surfboard, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I can get you on a board.
All right, man. Okay. Yeah, I'll hit you up next week when we come down and see if we can meet up.
Sick. We'll talk soon.